to the listening audience, affirming that all is well with you and your world. And I'm gonna get right to the subject matter, which is the pimping reality. And as I remind you, every time I get on, get your copy of the Macadine. Essential knowledge for boys and men in this critical hour in which we live. Brother Charles, peace and salute, my brother. We got to connect tomorrow sometime and talk about what you proposed to me about a week ago. We got to get on that, brother, because I already know that we'll make a great team in getting this message to men all over the world. But once again, if you haven't got your copy of the Macadine, I urge you to get it before they take it off the market, because the knowledge that's within this book will empower any man. I don't care what your color is, where you're from, what economic level you're on, because it doesn't matter. The rich man probably needs this book more than the man that's in the mud, because it's the rich man that commits suicide damn near more than every other person anyway. So that tells you that money doesn't make you a man, and it doesn't give you the power that a man yearns for by nature. And that yearning is for you to have a thorough knowledge of the man in the mirror, not the general man, because you got to know who you are as an individual. Even if you're Chinese, you can talk about Genghis Khan, you can talk about the great men of your history, but that doesn't have anything to do with you as a person, personally. So once again, get your copy. How you doing, Sister Ruthie? Happy belated birthday. Good to see you. So I'm going to get right to my subject. And as of lately, I've been quoting directly out of the book. Directly out of the book. And I'm going to go to chapter 30, entitled The Pimping Reality. But for those of you who are out here, taking your girl to the hotel room to spend $500 on what you really could have done at home, I'm hoping that you're enjoying yourself on this Valentine's Day, which out of the major 3 days out of the year, it's like one of the days where domestic violence is at an all-time low. Besides Christmas and Thanksgiving, I think Valentine's Day comes in third when it comes to the day of less violence. But tomorrow, the day after Valentine's Day, it's going to be business as usual. Because the number one argument, the cause of domestic violence, is not only cheating, but it is economics. The number one argument in households is about money, because everybody's out here chasing the dollar bill. But another thing about Valentine's Day that they don't tell you about is that it's one of the number one days where spouses and girlfriends and boyfriends cheat on each other. You best believe about 70% of men whose wives go to work, they have what they call a work husband or work boyfriend, and they have what you call not a secret Santa, but a secret Valentine's that the husband or boyfriend knows nothing about. So, yes, everybody's happy on Valentine's Day, but the day after is going to be some hell. So let me get right to my subject on the pimping reality, because it's something how, our young brothers want to be pimps and want to be players, not understanding the origin of pimping and the total pimping reality. But in chapter 30 of our illuminating book, we deal with that pimping reality, and I'm going to briefly read through it, and I'm hoping that everybody gets something out of it. The Pimpin' Reality. When you leave a pimp, you leave with nothing. Annie Lobert. In the Macadine, PIMP is an acronym for pathological, ignorant, marred, parasite. It's an acronym. The P is for pathological, which means one who's diseased. I is for ignorant. M is for marred. And P is for parasite. And if you look at any and every pimp, they fit this description perfectly because they're pathological or mentally diseased, and they're ignorant to the extent of the damage that they're doing, not just to the woman, but to themselves and society. They're marred, which means they're injured. Most of them come from a background that has inspired them to be pimps. And the last letter is for parasite. P is for parasite. And we know what parasites do. They live off of others. Pimp is a 17th century word of unknown origin, meaning a man who solicits clients for a prostitute. But we know that about 30% of pimps are women. And they said about 6% of pimps are transvestites. The popular and stereotypical pimp is normally a low-budget hustler who leeches off of a prostitute, who usually prostitutes for either survival or to support a drug addiction. This type of pimp is not the be-all and end-all of the pimping trade. He's just the lowest rung on the pimping ladder. He's just the lowest rung. Just the lowest rung. He's the low-budget pimp. But since America is a capitalist country, capitalism, a system that's vulturistic by design, the American businessman is trained in the art and science of legitimate or legal pimping, which leads to the ultimate pimp, which is the U.S. government receiving a kickback from their labor. Sports leagues, movie producers, beauty pageants, agents, promoters, auctioneers, and managers are all licensed pimps. Few low-budget pimps aspire to and or make it out of the nickel and dime level of pimping. The supremely dangerous, hostile, and risky nature of said pimping makes being a successful, prosperous pimp nearly impossible. Check it out. Let me read that again. The supremely dangerous, hostile, and risky nature of said pimping makes being a successful, prosperous pimp nearly impossible. How many pimps do you know that make it to a millionaire status? How many pimps do you know that make it to being a thousandaire or 100,000aire? It's very rare. It's very, very rare. Ignorant rappers and urban youth promote and glorify the pimping way of life, which consists of the ultimate displays and avocation of female abuse and misogynism. For example, the rap song by 50 Cent called Pimp. For some reason, perhaps the fact that most of them have no pimping experience, little or nothing is mentioned about pimping's mainly dominant dark side, which is jail, disease, poverty, death, etc., that most pimps are usually swallowed by. I must say that I would say 95% of all the pimps that I've ever met fit this description. They have been jailed, they suffer from disease, poverty, and death. I've seen a few of them literally go out of their minds and end up in mental institutions. But for the most part, they all end up diseased and broke. Alfalfa, who we refer to in the Macadine, the trick, Dodo, the pimp, and Dizzy, the prostitute, are the prime victims of pimpology. Anti-pimping laws, for example, pimping and pandering, are aimed at them, while major sex traffickers who satisfy the perverse sexual palate of the elite rarely have any run-ins with the law. For example, the man who so-called hung himself in jail, Jeffrey Epstein. The only reason he died was because of that black book that he had that revealed the hundreds of very powerful people like the Clintons and a host of actors and politicians who, if that book would have came out, heads would have rolled and hundreds would have went to prison and been indicted. So he had to go. But he's rare. For thousands of years in the most powerful nations, for example, Egypt, England, France, and Spain, pimping was a most important ingredient in their governmental foundation and framework. You can find pimping going all the way back to Egypt, all the way back thousands of years ago in China. But as they say, that's the oldest profession, and they're really not lying. So, pimping was a most important ingredient in their governmental framework and foundation. In the 18th century, the U.S. government took the pimp crown from its mother, England, and ever since has been the biggest pimp on the planet, thanks to the 400-year African slave trade that forced rape and prostitution on a kidnapped, helpless people. America's political, religious, and military leaders are the prostitutes. It's interesting that pimp and prostitute are both words that birthed around the same time and era between the years of 1600 and 1613. The alfalfas, the dodos, and the dizzies are educationally, financially, and socially the equivalent to innocent children forced unsuspectedly into the sex trafficking trade industry. The common man and woman, aka John and Jane Doe, see the Macadine glossary, are socially, mentally raped and robbed amnesia victims. The pimp game is pecking ordered in nature and commences from the most powerful down to the weakest. The pimp and the pimped all, to some degree, suffer from the same social disorders illustrated by the Macadine acronym for pimp, which is, once again, pathological, ignorant, marred, parasite. The pimp is a poor imp. The pimp, once again, is a poor imp, meaning little devil. His poverty stems from his lack of knowledge of the infinitely rich resources within the land he owns and stands upon, which is himself and yourself. This has caused him to be a wimp and eunuch within himself, his home, and society. All he needs are his internal lights turned on and the pilot to his boiler lit, for which is proper education and real enlightenment. He needs no God or religion to further his victimization. The poor pimp and wimp can be instantaneously rich upon the study and application of the teachings and techniques outlined in the book M, the Macadine. Get your book, get your copy. Be not of those who are pimps or those who are being pimped. And the key to that happening or not happening is for us to once again have that thorough knowledge of yourself that only comes from us going into solitude and remaining in a state of gratitude and not trying to use our powers to get material things. You know, people talk about the law of attraction and all these other laws, and they try to use them for the purpose of gaining wealth, gaining material things, gaining a car, gaining a house. But that's not where peace lies. The peace lies in you and I getting that thorough knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of ourselves and not allowing anybody to pimp you by telling you about, they're going to be the ones to give you that knowledge yourself. That can't come from nobody else. That knowledge cannot come from nobody else. That comes from your personal efforts. Comes from your personal efforts. Education is not going to give it to you. The politician is not going to give it to you. You and I must go in the closet of self and make it happen on our own. And it's a fearful journey, but it's the only journey that's going to grant us the access to the peace that we yearn for by nature. And that, for us men, the Mac life. The Mac life, living the life of a sovereign king and ruler. But you can only do that when you rule yourself. Otherwise, you're going to always be somebody's damn slave. You're always going to be somebody's damn slave until you take the crown and take the throne of your own self and your own being. Thank you for listening. Bless all of you. I'll be at you soon. Get your copy of the Macadine. And be not of the pimped ones, but of the rulers. Salute and peace.